Hey, you are a genius because you can learn anything. This is what I believe, and I'll say it a lot in this class. I hope you will take me sincerely because I do sincerely mean it. Um, we are all geniuses because we can learn anything. The word genius really comes from the generative ability of humans. That's where the root of the word comes from. So generative, being able to generate, being able to create, being capable of doing and learning anything. Let me tell you a little bit more about what I mean, and you can take some notes if you would. First, a fun picture. Can you see the cat? Then you are a genius. Okay, but all kidding aside, the idea of that I like to use in here to help us learn is the idea of the growth mindset. Seeing failure as a springboard for growth and developing your abilities. So it's this idea that your intelligence and talents aren't static. They don't stay the same. They change, they grow. Just like the rest of the body. The more you work it, the more your brain grows. Your brain is a body part. It is going to work better if you work it in the same way that muscles grow when we work out more. So the growth mindset, and you've probably heard about this before, but just a little bit more about it, comes from Carol Dweck, PhD, and this is a quote from her. It's based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. Although people may differ in every which way in their initial talents and aptitudes, interests, or temperaments, everyone can change and grow through application and experience. And so the growth mindset changes the way that we think of this word genius. If you think of it the old-fashioned way where you're a genius if you're just given this gift of intellectual capability, and some people have it and some people don't, then you're in this fixed mindset. And you're looking at other people and saying, oh, they're a genius. I'll never be that smart. Why do I even try, right? I mean, I know we've all had these thoughts in our head. I don't want to make you feel bad for having them. But if you can tell those thoughts to go away and change them to a growth mindset, you are going to be much more successful. Because instead of thinking, I'll never be that smart, that's not me, tell yourself, I improve with practice. The more I do this, the better I'm going to be. These are the kinds of things that you want to be thinking if you have the growth mindset. And now finally for our definition, thank you so much for listening to all of that about the growth mindset. Informing us now, with the growth mindset, we can define genius as this: the capacity to learn anything. And so if we look at intellectual capability as something that can change and grow, we all have a capacity to learn whatever it is that's ahead of us. And I think that's a pretty remarkable thing that we humans have. And that's what makes us geniuses. Let me tell you a little bit more about learning. Got some good info from the U of M professional development that I did recently. And it starts with this question. And so this is just kind of a thought project for you. And you get to pick one of these questions, or one of these answers. Take a moment. I'll read through them with you. And one is actually correct, according to decades of brain research at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities and elsewhere. The question is this: what is the most important factor in successful learning? So these might all be factors, right? But what is the one that is the most important? The first is the intention and desire to learn. You really want it. The second is paying close attention to the material as you study. You're locked in. You have no phones or technology nearby. 3, learning in a way that matches your own learning style. You know that you are an auditory learner, and so you're listening to information as you're learning it. 4, the time you spend studying. The more time you put into studying, and when I'm saying studying, I'm talking about active reflection. So this is not just reading, right? But it's reflecting on what you have learned actively. And so it happens both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So that applies anytime we're talking about the word studying. So just the more time you put into it, the more you're going to learn. 5, what you think about while studying. So the connections that you're making to what you're studying as you are actively reflecting. Okay, which option would you select and why? Just take a moment and pick one. All right, ready for the correct answer? It's number 5. If you were like me, you chose the wrong answer. I chose number 3. Turns out learning styles are not as important as they've been made out to be. What you think about while studying. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper and figure out what exactly this means. And we're going to do it by looking at a classic psychological study by Hyde and Jenkins from 1969. In their study, they wanted to figure out what was going to help people remember things. So this is about recalling. And it ended up teaching a lot about processing and the levels of processing that are needed in order to learn something new. And so the basic design of their study is shown here with 5 different groups of participants. Each group of participants was presented with a list of 24 words, one word at a time. And the instructions the participants were given about what to do with the words varied from group to group. Once all the words were presented, everyone had to try to recall each word from memory. Hyde and Jenkins looked at the impact of 2 variables on learning. The first one on the left is intentionality. So it's whether or not you knew you were going to have to recall the words when you were seeing them. Some people were told, these 2 groups were told that, you are going to have to remember these words, recall them, and try to list them out after we go through this process. If you were in the incidental groups, 3 and 4, you were not told this direction. So you weren't told that you'd have to remember the words. It's kind of like a pop quiz, right? You're showing the words and then, hey, guess what? Now you have to try to recall them. And so any learning that occurred was incidental. So that's why the word incidental is used. The other variable Hyde and Jenkins looked at was how participants rehearsed or encoded the words, what became known later as level of processing. 2 groups had to listen to the words and check whether or not the word had an E in it. So that's groups 1 and 3. The other 2 groups had to rate whether or not they found the word pleasant as they were looking at the words, these 24 words. Now, why would this make a difference? If you're checking for E's, then you're focusing on the spelling of the word, which is called shallow level of processing. If you're rating its pleasantness, you're thinking about the meaning of the words related to your own experience. That's called deep level processing. So say the word on the list is dance. If you're in the intentional condition, you knew that you'd be asked to recall it. If you're in the incidental condition, you haven't a clue about the recall test. And the other variable, if you're in the E-checking group, you're thinking about, if the other group is the pleasant group, you're thinking about dance. You check yes if you like dance and no if you don't. The 2 variables combine to give you 4 different groups. The 5th group was the control group, and all they were told was learn the words. They were just told to memorize them as best they could. All right, so what do you think? Which group is going to learn the most? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Let's take a look at the statistics. Oh, here are some of the words that were used as well. Sorry. All right, the stats. Here we go. So here, the green are the incidental. All right. Or excuse me, intentional. Green are intentional. So these folks were told you're going to have to recall the words, right? Incidental, they were not told. Now, initially, when I saw this study, I thought, well, of course, the greens are all going to score higher. But look at what happened. These guys were told that they'd have to recall the words. And these guys were told nothing. And look how much better they did. These guys were told nothing. Look how much better they did. So it doesn't necessarily matter how much you want to do a learning task. What matters the most was the level of processing, right? These guys remembered more. These guys were the deep level processors. These guys were not even told that they had to remember the words, and yet they only did 1 percentage point less well than the folks who were told you're going to have to remember them. What were they told as they looked at the words? They were told that they would have to, or they were just simply told to rate how pleasant the word was. All right? So, what does this show us? The level of processing matters. Deep processing, rating pleasantness, recalls more than shallow level processing. People who use deep processing learn the material whether they intended to or not. On the other hand, if people use shallow strategies, even if they wanted to learn, they didn't learn. Second, people who process words at a deep level, even if they weren't trying to learn, remember them just as well as the control group, who are just doing their best to learn. So the depth of processing matters, and the intention to learn doesn't. You can have every intention to learn, but if you use a shallow strategy, you won't learn. So think about how you can use deep levels of processing to help you learn. This is going to include making connections to your own life and allowing yourself to fully immerse yourself into the learning process instead of looking for all of the ease, right? So some things that people talked about as being deep levels of processing, like asking the question to rate how pleasant the word is, would be things like marking your notes. So you take notes, and after that you highlight things that are important, or you create questions about the notes. Other deep level processing skills might include writing Cornell note summaries. The summaries are the deep level processing when it comes to Cornell notes, right? Empathizing with characters when we're studying literature, instead of looking up what a character did, doing reflecting questions like, why would a character do this? And try to actually put yourself in their position. So those are the kinds of deep level processing skills that I think will help you in this class. Think about how you could use them and then do your summary of the Cornell notes. Thanks so much.